All right, Ian O'Neill here with Spencer Kyte right after the UFC 289 weigh-ins in the West Inn Bay Hotel.
The weigh-ins that went quickly until they didn't.
Yeah, Adam Fugit, thanks very much for keeping us waiting, but everybody has tipped the scales. The fights are all on. We are ready to go tomorrow night in Rogers Arena. Spencer's here with me. It's good to meet you in person.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Nice. I appreciate being welcomed back onto the show.
Yeah.
After my ignominious departure.
That's right.
We're back. We're together. We're still friends. As everybody knows, Sean had me on the State of the Union
exactly.
fairly quickly. So, as he said then, and as I will say now, tales of our demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Greatly exaggerated. But what's not being exaggerated is Amanda Nunes and Aljamain, who are going to be competing tomorrow night in the main event. Look, we were at the media day, Spencer, and Amanda Nunes, she's been in good spirits. She's been in good spirits all week. She seems ready for this challenge. But there's been a lot of doubt coming into this one for Amanda Nunes. I mean, a lot of people saying she's past her prime. She feels she's still there. She can get the job done on Saturday night. How are you feeling about Amanda heading in here and defending her title against Irene Aldana?
I mean, she really does have a different energy to her this week. I've been fortunate enough for the last several years that Amanda's been champion to speak to her before just about every one of these fights. And for the last couple, there was a little bit of not that she wasn't sure what she was doing it for.
Yeah.
But there's that missing piece of fire, right? Like getting up for Megan Anderson was getting up for Megan Anderson. Getting up for Juliana Pena, she was coming off an injury. She had some drama going on at ATT. She was coming out of having COVID, a bunch of different stuff going on. And quite frankly, she, like most of us, underestimated Juliana Pena.
Yeah.
But then she lost her title, and she got motivated to go and get her title back because she couldn't stand to not have her title. And when I spoke to her on Monday, it just radiated through the screen that she was in a different space. And we've seen it this week. It's a different kind of energy. There's a brightness to her this week. She's talked about being focused and motivated by having a new opponent and a dangerous opponent at that she respects, that she understands brings some real threats.
Yeah.
And I think it means we're going to get the best version of the Lioness we've seen in probably a couple of fights on Saturday night.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And there was the mention of the fresh face as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Juliana Pena has been her opponent for what seems like an eternity now at this stage, and she seems kind of refreshed at Irene Aldana coming in. It's a fresh challenge, and she's getting settled into her kind of new digs as well. Built up a new gym, has built a team around her to kind of prepare her for this fight and the last Juliana Pena one, and I guess the one before that as well.
Yeah, but it just sort of got there, and she talked about it. It's in the Countdown show if people want to check it out. She's talked about this isn't going to be the gym where you see a whole bunch of people coming in and everybody training here. This is going to be me, my coaches, a handful of friends that I train with, and that's about it. And I think the only person that we see from the UFC roster that's in the gym with her at the time is Ariane Lipsky, who trained with her at ATT for a long time. And so I think it's a situation for her where she feels far more comfortable and now settled, as you said, that it's been a few fights. And so it's going to be interesting Saturday.
We're all geared up. Obviously, Irene Aldana is the opponent. She is coming off a win over Macy Chiasson last time out. I know you spoke about that win on your podcast, Keep Up Kamura, this week, about maybe some critiques and everything like that coming in, but she's a legit challenger here. She's got some good boxing, she's got some power in her hands, and she's got a real threat coming into this fight with Amanda Nunes, and I'm really looking forward for her. She can become the fourth Mexican UFC champion right now, and that's a great achievement. We were just talking about Mexican MMA and its rise up through mixed martial arts over the last little while, and Irene Aldana can kind of add that and kind of join the list of fighters that are already champions in Brandon Moreno, Yair Rodriguez, and her teammate too, Alexa Grasso.
Yeah, there's a real cosmic sort of universe coming together feel a little bit about this, and I'm not necessarily somebody that believes in the stars aligning because she still has to step out there. We'll talk about it later, but Blake Malott has a little similar thing going on this week. She still has to step out there with the greatest female fighter of all time. But between Brandon Moreno, Jair Rodriguez, and Alexa Grasso winning titles this year. I spoke to her last week and she relayed a story of, so Irene Aldana is a cat person. She has 9 cats. And she said, look, I always thought that I always told myself when a black cat came into my life, because she doesn't go out and find them, they just kind of come into her life, strays and whatever. Whenever a black cat came into my life, that's when I'm going to fight for the title. And 2 weeks before she got the call that said, Pennington's off, we need you to fight Amanda Nunes, a black cat came over. And so there's just these little pieces of, is everything really lining up? Maybe, but she's still going to go out there and fight Amanda Nunes. She is dangerous, as you said. I mentioned on Keyboard Kimura this week. Anybody that wants to look at that liver kick from her back, an up kick against Macy Chasson and say, lucky kick, sure, maybe, but she still got the victory.
Yeah.
She did exactly what she needed to do in a spot where she needed to do it, which to me speaks to her competitiveness and her focus and her ability to finish fights kind of at any point. And so, do I think we see Ann New? I don't know, from a karmic side of things, but I think it's going to be a really competitive fight.
It is, and I'm really looking forward to it. Like, I think, a lot of the criticisms of this card, and I can speak for being here, I felt as the week has gone on that this kind of main event has built up, and the card itself has built up as well, and there's real anticipation there. The crowd were buzzing for the next guy we're going to talk about, Charles Oliveira, also for Nunes and Aldana as well. There was a good pop for them yesterday. But, I'm really looking forward to this main event. I mean, the story coming in is, does Amanda Nunes still have it?
Right.
Is she still capable of competing at the highest level? There are doubts. This is the perfect kind of challenger for her to try and go out there and prove that to us. And for Irene Aldana, she's a chance to make history as well, like we said. So that's a great, great main event that I'm definitely looking forward to tomorrow night as well. Charles Oliveira, like we mentioned, and O'Neill Spencer Kyte, the co-main event. Really, I mean, we don't have to talk too much about this. This is a
just one we've been waiting for.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this fight. Whatever's going to happen in it, who knows? But what we do know is Charles is coming in this week fairly defiant that he wasn't all there against Islam Makhachev. Kind of pretty dismissive about that fight in certain regards. Didn't want to go into too much detail about what went wrong.
Hadn't watched it, didn't want to talk about it. A wounded lion is still a lion. The team is wearing the champion has a name.
Yeah.
His name is Charles Oliveira shirts. It's an interesting spot because he is the guy with the most submission wins in UFC history. He is wildly dangerous, but as you and I talked about yesterday at the press conference, he's also the underdog in this fight.
Crazy.
Which is surprising, but also a thing that I can kind of understand because this fight was supposed to take place last month.
Yeah.
It got pushed back because of an injury to Charles Oliveira. Mm-hmm. So we get it here in Vancouver. You and I are happy we get to see it live. But what was the injury? He hasn't wanted to talk about it this week. And is he fully healed? Is he ready to go? Is he 100%? Because O'Neill Spencer is locked in and ready to go.
Yes.
He's been waiting for this moment. 8 straight wins, hasn't lost a fight in over 5 years. And now he gets the chance to beat a former champion and most likely punch his ticket to a championship opportunity. Dana White wouldn't commit yesterday.
No, he wouldn't.
And then Beneil got asked at the press conference, when you hear Dana not commit, how does that feel? And he was like, I'm good, I know I'm going to get it, it's fine. Like he was sold that it was going to happen. But you go out and beat Charles Oliveira, especially if you go out and finish Charles Oliveira, you got to be next in line.
You definitely do. I agree 100%. And look, with Beneil, I was speaking with him at the media day, and he is very confident that he is better in all areas than Charles. I mean, he pinpointed the wrestling and the grappling, where he feels he can take extreme advantage. Also saying that his basic skills on the feet will kind of contour a little bit of Charles Oliveira's wildness and erraticness on the feet as well. I thought that was very interesting. But obviously you're going to be confident coming in here, but this is such a big fight for Beneil. I mean, it's a big fight for Charles as well, but
for sure.
What I question is, like, when you have the most finishes and the most bonuses in UFC history, when you already have become the lightweight champion, what's left for you to prove? Can you really get yourself up to go in there and fight elite level competition time and time again? That's what we're going to find out with Charles on Saturday night. With Beneil, he's going to be a tough test.
Yeah.
And he's ready for this. He's hungry. I mean, the man has done enough already to get that title shot, but you know, like we were talking about, it pretty much becomes undeniable if he goes out there and gets a win over Charles Oliveira on Saturday night, doesn't it?
And the thing he said this week about, as you were talking about, as you talked to him about sort of the pairing of their skill sets, is when you go back and look at Justin Gaethje, when you go back and look at Dustin Poirier, when they had Charles hurt, they were afraid to go to the ground. They had no interest in going down there. What's the difference between those guys, Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush? Makhachev had no problem saying, fine, on the ground, we're good. Beneil feels the same way.
Yeah.
Can that be the deciding factor? Is that the swing piece of this? And as far as what does Charles have left to prove, I think he's looking at this as, I want to prove what I'm saying about Makhachev, but similar to, you know, Irene Aldana wanting to be the fourth, still got to get through Beneil Dariush.
Yep, absolutely. Look, if we'll move on, we'll get through this relatively quickly. We just wanted to touch base real quick to kind of go through all the fights. Next in line, we'll talk about Mike Malott and Adam Fugitt. I think this week, Spencer, has been Mike Malott's week.
It's been Mike Malott, right? Yeah, 100%.
He has come in here, you know, gave an energetic interview for the media day, brought the energy for the press conference yesterday, is willing to take up that torch and represent Canadian mixed martial arts. And, you know, you can talk about the current state. You spoke very well on Kibo Kimura this week about the current state of Canadian mixed martial arts. Right now we have no ranked Canadian UFC fighters. And
maybe Jillian Robertson. I haven't looked at the rankings yet, but maybe Jillian Robertson.
Yeah, but it's sparse. So. It's sparse, but you know, Mike Malott has a chance to come in here. You know, the UFC are putting faith in him. Third fight on a pay-per-view card, and I think this is a big moment for him to go out there and get a finish, and you know, pave his way down on the 170-pound rankings up to the top 15. You've got to be heading if he gets a win over here. But it's not going to be easy against Adam.
Yeah. This is a showcase opportunity for Mike Malott. Like, this is what it feels like. This is what it's set up as. He is the guy, as you said. He has happily grabbed that torch and said, this is our week, we're back. He wanted to be here. He requested that after his last fight. And he's steered completely into it. He's got the Full Send sponsorship and guys behind him. He's got the UFC push. He's had all the great sound bites this week. He's done it perfectly. Now it's just about getting through Adam Fugitt, who yesterday at the press conference I got to ask him the question of like, here you are, and it's Mike, and it's all about him, and I couldn't even get through my question before the booze started raining down, and he steered right into the booze, talked to him in the back, and he was like, "It's great, man, I love it. This is fantastic." And he's a tough kid, right? Both of them have a ton of finishes. Adam Fugitt's coming off a massive underdog win last time out against Kinoshita. Can he do it back-to-back fights? Can he come into Canada? I mean, he's the one that lives closer to Vancouver. He lives 7 hours down the road in Eugene, Oregon. Mike lives a 5-hour plane ride away in Fonthill, Ontario. Sorry for giving out where you live, Mike. But it's going to be a competitive fight. It's going to be fireworks from Jump Street, most likely a finish. And sort of as we said, right, earlier today, as we were getting in here, everything has been great for Mike Malott. It is all lined up perfectly. Everything has been breakout, breakout, breakout. Now you just got to do the hard part and get the victory.
That's it. All the hard work is done. All the talk is done. You got to get in there and do it tomorrow night, and it'll be interesting to see if Mike Malott can do it. Let's talk about Dan Ige versus Nateland here. Like, as we're going through this card, another great fight here. Like, I mean, this cannot be anything else, only fireworks going in here. Dan Ige obviously coming back off a big win in his last fight. Nateland, we're coming in on a 3-fight win streak, and both of these guys we know are going to bring it. We know Nate has been bringing it on the mic during the week. He gave us a couple of great quotes in the media day, and he brought the energy. Dan Ige is coming in, and it's all business with Dan.
Yeah, Dan is quiet. Dan is professional. He just wants to show up, handle his business. I think he was the second to last fighter to weigh in today, and was one of those guys that, as we were all sitting there, people were like, "Oh, 2 left." I had talked to Dan and his team yesterday, and he was on point yesterday. So this wasn't anything this morning. He's a pro's pro, and this is a big fight for Nate Landwehr, who's coming in, tons of momentum, has been sort of the secondary breakout star here, I would say, in terms of getting on the microphone and having things to say. He's a huge personality.
Yeah.
He knows he's got to push, and he knows this is the fight for him to carry him forward into the top 15.
Yeah.
For Dan Ige, this is, I need to go out and stop this dude from taking my spot and keep. Dan's message all week has been, I'm not focused on anything else. It's been about rebranding. It's about rebuilding my name after that 3-fight losing streak, which all came to top 10 talents.
Yes.
So it's not really like one of those 3-fight losing streaks where you know, knock him down a few pegs. But this is one of those fights where Dan Ige goes out and shows you why he's in the top 15, why he's the guy you've got to get through in order to get into those spots. If you're Nateland, if you're Damon Jackson last time out.
And look, Nateland we know is going to be a tough fight, and it's not going to be an easy out for
No, hell on wheels from second one.
Yeah, he said yesterday at the press conference he wants to go out there and kick Dan in the head when he was asked how he wants the fight to go.
Yeah.
And then he went down, he said he wants to take him down and grapple him as well. So he's keeping Dan guessing, he's keeping us guessing. But we're going to find out tomorrow night how that fight goes down, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the 145-pound division. Opening up the main card, Eric Anders, Marc-Andre Barrios. What do you think of this fight? You know, you're kind of talking about Anders, and he spoke very candidly this week about this being a part of his last 5 fights.
Right.
And it's a kind of a weird mindset to be in. You know, is he thinking of an exit strategy? He wants to go out there and put on good performances. That's what he said. He's coming in here against Marc-Andre, and it's going to be like, these two are two bruisers. That's the only way I could kind of describe these two guys. I think this is going to be some heavy slogging at the best of times in there, but it'll be interesting to see who'll come out on top.
I'm honestly surprised that there hasn't been more like heat and tension between the two of them.
Yeah.
Marc-Andre Barrios has been calling for this fight for 4 years. Like from the day he got to the UFC, Eric Anders is the guy he's always asked to fight. Whenever he's had a mic stuck in front of him, he's like, I'd like that Eric Anders fight. If I'm Eric Anders and I'm now signed up against him, this whole week would have been, be careful what you wish for, are you sure you want this smoke, like all kinds of different things. It's going to be interesting because, as you said, Eric has talked about, I'm 35 or 36 now, I'm not necessarily planning my exit, but I know it's out there on the horizon. And so it's interesting to see how that lines up. He switched gyms before this fight, moving from Fight Ready to the MMA lab, staying in the Arizona area, in the Phoenix area, but switching gyms. That'll be interesting to see. You know from yourself and your career and training in the past that building that rapport is a really important thing.
For sure.
So what's that like after just one camp?
Yeah.
And for Marc-Andre Barrios, this is the fight you asked for.
Yeah.
Now you got to show us why you wanted this one the whole time. Coming off a very good win last time out against Julian Marquez, but a guy that has been inconsistent in the UFC throughout his career. Do we get power bar, or do we get the guy that got run over by Anthony Fluffy Hernandez because he couldn't match that pace? I think that side of things favors the guy from Gatineau, Marc-Andre Barrios.
Yeah.
Because Anders is sort of more of a plotter and a little bit more tentative with his strikes.
Yeah.
But I like your description of bruisers, and I think that's what we see here is two guys that kind of want to let's just prove a little something to the other guy. And they get out there and they kind of start banging it out, and we see where it gets to.
Yeah, it's like with Anders as well, going back to saying that it's his last 5 fights, I'm interested to see how they go, because sometimes when you come to terms with your last run as well.
Maybe it's a thing that just dials them in.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the past, but it'll be interesting to see. That's a great fight to get us opened up on the main card as we move down to Nazarene Imam versus Chris Curtis. A fight, in my opinion, that has gone somewhat under the radar this week, because I'm really interested in this fight. It's an interesting clash of styles, number one. And I'm also I'm surprised these guys weren't included in the media day. And you know, they've been. We've seen Chris Curtis knocking around. He was giving trolls a hard time in the hotel. We haven't seen too much of Imam around only for the weigh-ins this morning. But this is a big one for Imam. I mean, coming off a loss in his last fight. To Sean Strickland, yeah, and that was
Chris Curtis's teammate, training partner, podcast partner.
There you go. So it's a little very close to home again for Imam, and I'm sure Sean Strickland would have been sharing some pointers, some tips, and everything like that. It's the benefit of having a teammate that's just fought a guy, will be huge for Chris Curtis coming in here.
So I came in on Tuesday and got to do interviews with the UFC digital team, and Chris Curtis was one of the guys that came in. They stuck the microphone in my hand to ask him questions, and that was one of the things I asked him. What benefit, how beneficial is it to having Sean just fought him, to having your coaches, and it's not necessarily the exact same coaches, right? Chris Curtis works a lot with Nate Pettit, Sean works a lot with Eric Nixon. But you've had that group work with him, and Chris said, look, I did the fight prep. I did the tape study, so I'm already familiar with him.
Yeah.
I know he's going to be somewhat different, because Sean and I are very different styles, and it's been 6 months now. He certainly can work on and change and improve some things. But you kind of get a sense already of this is what this guy brings to the table. And if I'm honest about this fight, I'm desperate to see what Imam has fixed and has changed. I'm sure there was some letdown of going from Kelvin Gastelum to Sean Strickland on short notice and doing it 205. Your first main event, everything goes sideways, and then you lose the fight. But this is where you prove you deserve some of that push. You deserve those main event opportunities, and to be somebody that we look at in this division, that we're always asking for new names. We're always asking for people that can move forward. This is the one you got to win if you're Nazarene to get forward. And for Chris Curtis, he's playing with house money.
Yeah.
This was another thing I talked to him about on Tuesday. I had talked to him before he got to the UFC, before his debut against Phil Hawes, because he had just turned up at a weigh-in like this. Phil Hawes' opponent, I believe it was Duran Wynn, couldn't make weight, didn't even come in. And Chris Curtis was in the building and was just like, I'll fight him. And weighed in, whole thing, pose on the scale. I have the photo of Chris Curtis signed that minute UFC fighter on the scale.
Crazy.
And he never thought he would get here, right? He had sort of resigned to not being here. And paused and said on Tuesday, and it was a really cool moment, because he said, like, I never did, but I have just very recently. And it's like, man, I've been here for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
This wasn't going to happen. I was resigned to this isn't going to happen. And now it's happening. And I've had some friends tell me, like, hey, man, you're doing the damn thing. And he kind of paused and was like, I'm doing the damn thing. And it's like, yeah, and you're going to do the damn thing on Saturday. And it's going to be fun.
You have to give Chris Curtis credit, like obviously signing up when he was 33 years of age. And you know, he's a familiar name into the UFC within 2 years. But like you said, coming in and taking those opportunities like he did, that's what you need to do if you want to make a name and forge a path for yourself inside the UFC. Look at going back to Imam, I've been critical in the past of Fernand Lopez and the MMA Factory. I feel that they have struggled against higher level competition in game planning and what to do when their game plan isn't working out. I don't feel that we're at elite level competition here with Chris Curtis, and I think the vice versa for Chris Curtis. Both these guys coming off a loss and have some things to change, but it will be very, very interesting to see who comes out on top on Saturday night. I'm looking forward to that one. We've got some more Canadian action in the next. This is going to be a handful. Jasmine, Jasdavicius.
You got it. You nailed it.
I nailed it. Jasmine's going in to face Miranda, Maverick. Both of them looking in good spirits today. Weighed in early, got the job done. They're ready to go out there in the flyweight division. And you know, we have a couple of Canadian fighters fighting before this, but you know, Jasmine has a chance to go out there and get a big win for Canada before the main card starts. And it's a big fight for her here. It
is for sure. And she's someone, I was talking earlier this week with a couple of people of like, Jazz is somebody that got to this sport a lot later than people. Miranda Maverick is 25 now. Jasmine Jasdavicius hadn't started fighting at 25. Hadn't started training at 25. And like her origin story in this sport is a great one. And per the recommendation of Aaron Bronstetter at TSN, I'm going to work really hard to get Jazz on a conversation with to tell you all that story. But this is an interesting fight. She's coming off a good win. I kind of backed off my thoughts on Jazz when she lost to Natalia Silva, because Natalia Silva came in off a couple of years on the sidelines. It was her UFC debut. We didn't really know that much about her. Well, now that loss doesn't look that bad, because Natalia Silva is an absolute badass, and I am on Team Natalia Silva now, full blown. And Jazz looked good in her rebound fight last time out against Gab Fernandez. But this is another step up, right? This is one of those ones where it's like, we're going to find out if Jasdavicius is ready for that top 15 level. Miranda Maverick is number 15 right now in the flyweight division, coming off 2 good wins, or 2 losses. It's the split decision of Macy Barber, which is a close fight, and then losing to Aaron Blanchfield, which you can't get mad at. Aaron Blanchfield, dynamite in this division.
100%.
So let's just see. Is Miranda Maverick right now sort of the bar for that next wave of fighters that want to get into the top 15? Does she come out and say, I'm very much in this pack for Casey O'Neill, who got a fight announced today, with Aaron Blanchfield, with Macy Barber, with sort of that young group that's ascending?
Yeah.
Or does Jasmine force her way in?
Well, the women's 125 division for me is right up there in one of the best divisions in the UFC right now. And we're going to talk about the 135 men's division next, but I feel, the level of competition that's happening inside women's 125 in the top 15 and even outside the top 15, it's going to be pretty hot and heavy for the next couple of years there. So it'll be interesting to see if Jasmine or Miranda can kind of get the job done. Obviously Miranda fighting behind enemy lines on Saturday night. It'll be interesting to see, but I have a feeling that this fight is going to deliver too. Like, these two women always like to move forward and get off their shots, and it should be an exciting fight there. Eamon Zabi and Arekilang in the bantamweight division, like we said, you spoke with Eamon on a conversation with this week. Give us some thoughts on his mindset coming into this fight.
I mean, he is so rock solid at all times. I mean, now, and I will say this, he talked about it on the show, there was a point there after the loss to Ricardo Ramos and then going into the fight with Vince Morales that was a loss as well. That mindset wasn't rock solid. He was nervous about having gotten knocked out, because he got knocked out really like all the way out, quite bad, quite a vicious elbow, great shot from Ricardo Ramos in Madison Square Garden, and it lingered with him for a while. Since then, he's sort of worked with some people, he's talked to some people, he talked on the show about getting some insights from GSP and his brother Faraz, of course, and sort of just set himself to just go out there and be the best version of me. Got knocked out once, doesn't mean it's going to happen again, doesn't mean it's going to ruin the rest of my life going forward. I put so much work into this, I put so much time into this, I have to give myself the best opportunity to go out here and make the most of it. And he talked about it as well from a coaching standpoint of like, how can I try to lead other people into the cage if I didn't work my way back and get myself back to winning some fights and having some success. He's won his last 2 fights. He's a guy that carries momentum very well through breaks.
Yeah.
And he's been off again for another, not quite a year, 11 months I believe it is, since the Ricky Tercios fight. And it's just a guy at 35 that knows exactly who he is.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about, I win this one and then I'm 2 away from a title, like you hear from some people at different points, right? Where it's maybe a little bit delusional, it's a little bit, gotta tell yourself these things so that you're chasing that carrot. This is just about competing and being the best martial artist he can be for Eamon. And I think that really serves him well, both in this fight and just in general going forward.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a TriStar guy on the card as well. Obviously TriStar being a very focal point in the growth of Canadian mixed martial arts through the years as well. And quieter than normal now, so it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of springboard over the next couple of years and bring forth a couple of young prospects as well through Canadian MMA. I know Mike Malott was kind of talking about there is a lot of people on the cusp, a lot of prospects out there and a lot of unknowns that he expects to come through, and it'll be interesting to see if any of them come through and TriStar. His opponent, Arekilang, or I probably butchered
No, you're nailing it.
Yeah.
Killing it.
I think he's coming in on a 2-fight win streak. I do feel Eamon can get the job done here, but he's going to have to cross his T's and dot his I's in this one with Arekilang.
Yeah, it feels to me like a fight between a guy that needs to be super technical in Eamon Zahabi and a guy that's going to come out here mad bastard.
yeah.
Like not crazy mad bastard, but just throwing power shots the whole time, swinging a little wide. And if Eamon Zahabi can keep it inside, if he can keep it tight, get that jab off, working that TriStar jab that is famous, work inside of the hooks, then we're good. Keep the guard up when you need to. But Arekulang's tough. I mean, fought Jeff Molina really well, really close in their shared debut. I thought the fight with Cody Durden was close, and he's come out in his last 2 and got victories. He's looked good since going to Fight Ready and teaming up with Eddie Cha and that crew. And so it's a tough fight. It's a really interesting fight. It's the veteran test that Harry and I and you and Harry often talk about for Arekilang, right? The 35-year-old with a little bit of experience. And for Eamon, it's can you get past this younger guy and keep yourself moving forward? It's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, absolutely is. Looking forward to it. Next, Blake Builder will take on Kyle Nelson. Obviously, Canada's Kyle Nelson in the featherweight division. How do you see that fight going?
I'm really interested in this fight because Kyle Nelson is a gigantic featherweight.
Yeah.
He's 5'11", he's fought at 55 before, getting to 45 is tough. He made 45 on the dot today, no issues at all. And when you see him, and then you see Blake Bilder, who weighed in probably 2 or 3 people before him, it's a pronounced difference.
It is.
And it's going to be even more pronounced on Saturday.
I originally stuck Blake Bilder down just looking at him as a 130. I had him weighing in at 135, and then I was like, hold on a minute, I had to check, and then I changed it to 145.
And ironically, Kyle Nelson came into our media interviews on Tuesday, and as my colleague at UFC.com Digital, Mackenzie Patisic, is talking to him, she kind of stumbled over 45 because you see him and he looks like a 55, if not a 70, if not a welterweight. And so I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays into things. Blake Bilder had a terrible time getting over to Perth in February. It was a very long sort of process, debut, jet lag, the whole nine. This is a much easier trip. He's a California guy, you come up, but you're going to be in there against the most experienced guy you've faced, the most well-rounded and polished guy you've faced, who, despite the fact that he's coming off a loss to Jai Herbert and a draw with Doo Ho Choi, brings confidence from those because he did well. He feels he won both of those fights. Regardless of what we think of that sort of mindset and approach, he's confident in what came from that to then go and face a guy making his second fight in the UFC.
Interesting. That is an interesting one. Kyle Nelson can kind of, well, I guess we have Dania Belbita that's kicking off the fight. We'll talk about that next. Let's talk about David Dvorak and Steve Urquhart. I think Urquhart coming in here, don't really know too much about him. David Dvorak obviously was supposed to be fighting Matt Schnell, who was forced to pull out of this fight. Dvorak stays on the card. Steve comes over from Australia, New Zealand, kind of take up the mantle here. Do you know much about him? I honestly don't.
I know a little bit. He's a submission guy. I reached out to Chris Reeve, who's a great journalist for one of the New Zealand outlets, and said, okay, he's on this card in Vancouver, I'm going to be there, give me the scoop. And he said he's just a wild man on the ground. Like, he's just looking for submissions all the time. Attack. He's, again, sort of similar to the Chris Curtis thing, not for the same reasons of the same lineup. There's a little bit of house money. This is a little bit of can't lose, right? This is a win-win for him. Turn up, lose to David Dvorak. Okay, I lost to a top 10 guy. 2 weeks notice. My fight a couple weeks ago got canceled. They stuck around. They found me an opponent, something lined up, top 10 guy. Go out and beat him and put yourself right into the rankings. Off your debut, move yourself to 10-1. You get a finish, even better. David Dvorak comes in on a 2-fight slide. Is he looking at Steve Urquhart and saying, who's this guy? I've been in there with X, Y, and Z. We'll find out.
We sure will. Last but not least, Diana Belbita takes on Maria Oliveira 115 at 115. It's an interesting fight. Obviously, Diana, coming from Romania, does have some Canadian heritage coming in here as well. She'll kick off the card against Brazil's Maria Oliveira. Any thoughts coming into this fight?
I mean, this is fighting for your place in line, really, right? Like, not that you or I or anyone at Severe would ever be on the, like, loser goes home, wanting people to get cut. But they've both struggled. They've both failed to have consistent success. Diana Belbita has had some moments where she's looked good. She's had some moments where she's made some bad decisions. Maria Oliveira has had a couple of tight fights. There's a couple split decisions in there. One she won, one that she lost. This is just go out there and sort of prove you belong. Prove you deserve an opportunity going forward. And the winner will stick around. The vanquished fighter may not. But it'll be a good way to kick off the card. Diana Belbita, as you said, born in Romania, lives in Stony Creek, Ontario, trains with Kyle Nelson, Mike Malott, that whole crew, splitting time between House of Champions and Niagara Top Team. So she will get a pop on Saturday to kick this thing off at Rogers Arena.
And that kind of wraps us up. 11-fight card. It's nice to have such a smaller card as well to go through. It'll kick off local time 4 o'clock tomorrow. I'm looking forward to getting there. We have the ceremonial weigh-ins actually coming later on as well. But on Saturday night, it's all about Amanda Nunes, Irina Aldana, Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush. 2 fantastic fights to top the card. Any final thoughts before we head on, Spencer? Quick preview this week. we snuggled ourselves into a corner here in the West Inn Bay Hotel in Vancouver. There may be a little bit of background noise. My mic fucked up, so we don't have proper sound, but we're doing the best that we can. It's great to be joined by Spencer. Any final thoughts on the card before we wrap it up, Spencer?
No, I mean, I think this is just one that it's better than people understand. I think there's a little bit of looking at the main card and thinking the names aren't big, but if you know who these athletes are, if you know what they do, then you know this is going to be a great main card. You know it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be a great night. The Rogers Arena is going to be bumping from the get-go.
Yeah.
There were loads of people at the weigh-ins yesterday, lined up outside waiting to get in. There will be way more people at the press conference yesterday, I should say. I'm sure weigh-ins will be insane today. It's going to be a great show.
That's it. It's going to be great. And check out Spencer on the keyboard, Kimura. It was great to get to see him this week, putting out great content on each and every UFC card. We'll be back. I'll be doing some live results tomorrow night. We'll have some questions perhaps at the press conference as well. And we'll be back to our regular settings for the preview shows this week. We had to get something done. We've been on a good run of preview shows and we didn't want to stop here.
We made it through vacations and marriages and
everything.
Getaways.
It was like I come to my first live event and we had stuff going wrong, and then we're like, we got to get something done. So we got it done. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again pretty soon. Thanks for tuning
Congratulations,
in.
Andy.
Yes, congratulations, Andy, Harry. And we will see you soon. Check out Spencer at Spencer Kyte on Twitter, Instagram, and check out the keyboard Kimura at O'Neill MMA for all updates on UFC 289. We'll see you all soon, folks.